Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here. Actually, I got an invitation from GW about 2 years ago when I was still working and living in Hong Kong at the University of Hong Kong. When I first got the invitation, I wrote immediately back and told GW that I would love to come to Washington, D.C. However, I would wait for cherry blossom to come. And therefore they waited for 2 years, and finally I could make it, and now I'm not a writer anymore, so I'm a civil servant now. But despite all that, it's what a pleasure to be here, and lovely weather these past couple of days. This time, making the trip to the US is the first time in my capacity as Minister of Culture. This event here, I was only informed about this event a couple of days ago, and therefore I really did not prepare a formal speech for you. So I thought I would just casually have a conversation with you about, to keep you up to date about Taiwan or cross-strait affairs. So this Ministry of Culture is something very new and old. It actually pieced together 4 different ministries before. And so I left Hong Kong after 9 years of sojourn in Hong Kong. I left Hong Kong in February and joined the government and working on the reorganization of the ministry. So the official launching date was May 21st, so it's very, very new. And for the first time, we are managing to put together literature, publishing, with film, popular music, TV content, architecture, cultural heritage, and so on. So these are the major. We are only trying to think of ways moving closer to some kind of a solution. From my ministry, we try to promote cultural exchanges across the strait. We try to make our sentiments understood from the other side. At the same time, we would also urge our people on Taiwan to have a more sympathetic understanding of China as well. As I said yesterday in my talk, that China is a country which because of the chosen path towards radicalism in the past half a century, the country suffered a lot. And I compare China to an aircraft carrier, while Taiwan is a tiny motorboat. But there are people in that carrier, so the important thing for us is try to talk to each other, and that is why the cultural exchanges between the two is very, very important. Thank you.
Yes, please.
My name is Irina Timushkina. I represent cultural section of Russian independent paper, and my question is about your fine arts museum, because when...
Well, I would think you probably don't really ask this kind of question when you talk about the relationship between, for example, Canada and America. That's no concern. But it becomes an issue, not only between Taiwan vis-a-vis China, but I think it's on the mind of the Americans as well when it's America vis-a-vis China. So I think the U.S., for example, with the merging in May, the China conglomerate just bought over this cinema chain in the U.S., and there were a lot of discussions here. So so what I'm trying to say is, it's hard to draw that line because culture or cultures change all the time. It's fluid, and therefore you can't possibly have guidelines saying I draw the line here. I tend to think what's important is to really influence China or help China or carry on a dialogue with China so that China will become even more an open society, a civil society, so that someday maybe the relationship between Taiwan and China, I mean in terms of culture, will be like Canada and America. Then that is no national security is no issue. I mean that's far remote in the aim, but I think we have to dare to imagine that. And as in terms of the cultural accord between China mainland and Taiwan, we are open to that. We're not saying no. As a matter of fact, we hope to sit down with them to discuss very practical issues. For example, with the custom. When our symphony orchestra travels with a whole group with all kinds of musical instruments getting across the border, we have problems with the instrument. So we tend to be more pragmatic. Let's say, why don't we talk about customs? Why don't we talk about the very practical management of theaters and cinemas and quotas on films? So one by one, instead of signing something that's very abstract, but we're open to all possibilities. Artists and dancers and playwrights, they actually thrive despite the constraint on them. Despite the constraint, we just hope. The reason why I talk about the isolation today is because I think when that constraint were lifted,